Welcome to the Beyond Food Show. I'm Stephanie Dodier, clinical nutritionist, weight loss, and emotional eating expert, speaker, and founder of the Keto Connector program. As an ex-corporate executive turned health expert, I went through my own healing journey, losing 100 pounds and overcoming a number of diagnosed conditions. The secret to my transformation? The moment I realized that the solution was more than just about food. It was about connecting my mind and my body and listening to my body messages. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or answer your question to help you listen and observe your body in a curious and compassionate way with a French accent and a little bit of humor. The most important relationship you have is the one with yourself, so get ready to embrace it and rock your body and mind to the life you desire. Let's do this. Welcome to episode 47. I have a question for you. Do you ever wonder why we are seeing booming rates of health conditions such as obesity, diabetes, ADHD, ladies, thyroid condition, or skin condition like eczema and psoriasis? Why is it exploding? And that is over the last 20 or 30 years. Maybe it has to do with toxicity. Now, in this podcast, we talk about going beyond the food, and talking about toxicity is that next step, and how toxicity or toxin can affect your health, but also prevent you from going to the next level with your health. So if you have been very diligent about the way you choose to eat and what type of food you're consuming, and you've done all that transformation in your life, but you're still sticking on certain part of your health, I highly invite you to listen to this show, because it's going to teach you what is a toxin, but most important, how it can impact your health. And our guest today, Dr. Pizzorno, has got some fascinating stats on one particular toxin and insulin sensitivity. So highly recommend you stick through the show for this one. I have a personal story with toxicity, and I'm going to talk about it during the interview, but I smoked for 15 years. Among many other things that I've done to my body, smoking led me to be toxic with lead, cadmium, and mercury, which I had to go through on a very specific protocol to detox my body. That is about 2.5 years ago. So stick with us if you want to know more about this topic. But before we go there, I want to thank you, the listener, for my support of the Keto Connector, both the book and the program. It has been amazing. And just to give you a little sneak peek into the feedback I have been receiving for the Keto Connector, I just want to share a testimonial that came through Amazon.com. So from an American reader, and it's fascinating because this reader is actually a physician. So let me read that to you very quickly. Stephanie's book is an elegant and simple way in which to reverse the harm created by years of eating sugar and refined and processed food. She helps you adopt a whole and real food lifestyle that will improve your health. Importantly, though, Stephanie has personal experience and has a gift of addressing the emotional aspect of health and provide you with practical solution to overcome emotional craving. The videos that accompany the book and access to our online community are incredibly helpful and improve the chance of you being successful in your change. Isn't that amazing? That's exactly what I was going for. So if you've read the book, you'll probably say, yeah, that's bang on, that's the book. If you've not yet read it or took part in the program, that wraps it up in like 6 sentences. But what I'm mostly proud of, it's a physician who's writing this. So a physician that recognized the connection between the mind and the body, and recognizing that the book is delivering that, which is exactly what I was looking for. So the link to the Keto Connector will be in the show notes. I invite you to go check it if you haven't yet. And if you did and you're supporting my work, thank you. I'm blowing a big kiss at you right now. So are you ready to hear from our guest today, Dr. Pizzorno, about his most recent research on toxin and toxicity and how it affects your health? If you are, let's do this. A naturopathic physician and he is the author and co-author of more than 10 books, included the internationally acclaimed textbook of natural medicine, which is now in its 4th edition. And he's also the best-selling author of the Encyclopedia of Natural Medicine. Our guest today is convinced that lifelong good health rests on 2 key determinants: your exposure to toxin and your ability to process them in your body. While lifestyle, diet, and genetic all play a major role in well-being, many symptoms of declining health and chronic disease are rooted in toxin overload and our exposure to a barrage of chemicals, heavy metals, radiation, electromagnetic frequency, and pollution that are a byproduct of our modern lifestyle. While the human body has an innate capacity to detoxify, it cannot cope with the elevated level of toxin which we are exposed today. So welcome to the show, Dr. Pizzorno.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation to join you today.
It's a pleasure. And I was telling Dr. Pizzorno when we were chatting in the beginning that he's like my father of nutrition skills. I've been using his book for the YouTube audience, the Encyclopedia of Natural Medicine, for 5 years now. In the first 2 years of my practice with patients, I was using it at every single protocol. So I'm so honored to have you here in my podcast today.
Well, I'm honored that you found my work of value to you, because that's why I write those books. I write those books so we can help improve people's health, because so many people suffer unnecessarily because they don't know about the wisdom of natural medicine. The natural medicine being get nutrients in, get toxins out. It's very straightforward.
It's a simple formula, right? And sometimes It's almost too simple for people to pay attention to.
It seems that way sometimes.
So in my research on your history and your background, I found that you have more than 50 years of experience in various fields of specialty. Even you started in allopathic medicine research.
Yes.
So what's the aha moment that got you over to the dark side of alternative and natural medicine?
Well, that's actually a more interesting question than it may seem at the start. So way back 50 years ago, half a century, I was working in conventional medicine research and just loving it. I was working with MDs and PhDs to try to find a cure for arthritis. Okay. And I thought my career would be to go on to get a PhD in education. But then I learned that an event occurred that actually changed my life. And that is the woman who married my roommate from college had suffered from juvenile rheumatoid arthritis since she was a teenager. And that was an incurable disease. I knew it was incurable because we were trying to find a cure for it. And then she was cured. I said, whoa, what happened? So I was having dinner with her and her husband, and she said, well, I said, how'd you cure this incurable disease? She said, well, I went to a naturopathic doctor and he cured me. I said, what's that? Because I didn't know there was anything other than MDs at that time. So I went to this naturopathic doctor and I asked him, so what'd you do for my friend? And he said, well, I detoxified her liver and taught her how to eat properly. I thought, what does liver have to do with her knees and her hands being swollen? And then that started a journey. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized that, yes, conventional medicine is wonderful in many areas, but for the day-to-day health, for prevention of chronic disease, for maintaining vitality, drugs don't give you that. You've got to take care of your body.
Absolutely. That's quite the haha moment. So good for you for being so open to the other side. And it obviously did very well for you. So you have your new book, and I'm just reaching over right now to get it, The Toxin Solution, and where you talk about how those toxin, those hidden poison in our environment and what they can do to our health. Yes. So what made you write this book? Because we've all known about this in the field for years, but what occurred that made you write this book? And what is a toxin for you?
So let's kind of go through this. So first off, let me start with what is a toxin?
Perfect.
And I would define as a toxin anything that poisons enzyme systems in human physiology. Because, our bodies are, as you well know, our bodies are basically enzyme machines. An enzyme is basically a protein that's determined by our genetics, and then a cofactor, which is typically a vitamin or a mineral, which then makes the enzyme work. Well, the way many toxins work is by poisoning the enzymes so they don't work properly. So that's one definition, is poison enzyme systems. Another definition, which actually we'll talk about a fair amount in our conversation today is that many of these toxins actually block the insulin receptor sites on the cells of our on the surface of our cells. They also damage our DNA. There's so many mechanisms by which they cause trouble. So anything that damages DNA, blocks receptor sites on the cells, poison enzyme systems, I call that a toxin. Okay. So since I've been involved in medicine now for a very long period of time, I've had a chance to see why people are sick. And the reasons people are sick have actually changed over the last 50 years. So I was in private practice way back in the 70s. People were sick because of nutritional deficiencies from eating poorly, from smoking, from not exercising, kind of you might say the active determinants of health. But then I started seeing the passive determinants of health changing. What I mean by that is that the air we breathe, that's passive. The air is the air. Well, now we've put a lot of toxins into the air. The water we drink, turns out there's a lot of toxins in the water we drink, and industrialization has released a lot more toxins into the environment that they end up in the water. And then we got food. So not only are we creating food that is lower in nutrient content, we are also now adding to the foods things like organophosphate pesticides, organochlorine pesticides, cadmium, arsenic, all these things that poison our bodies. And then I can continue on, but another big source is healthy beauty aids. So we put on healthy beauty aids to make us beautiful, and also make us smell nice. Okay. Well, in order for them to smell nice, we have to put in a class of chemicals called phthalates, and phthalates solubilize these might say fragrances, and they also stabilize them. But the phthalates poison insulin receptor sites on the cells of our bodies. So our cells have little receptor sites on the surface, and insulin that comes from the pancreas tells the cells to absorb more sugar when there's too much sugar in the blood, or if the cells need more sugar. Well, the problem is if you block those insulin receptor sites, the cells can't respond to the message to take in more sugar, and what happens then is the pancreas has to overproduce insulin in order to get enough sugar into the cells. Well, you do that for 20 or 30 years, you burn out your pancreas, and now you've got diabetes.
Wow. That is, you're teaching me something, because I knew that toxins were prevalent in the cause of our disease today, but I had no idea there was a link between phthalate and insulin receptor, because great majority of our audience have insulin sensitivity issue because the age what they are or different situation in their life. That's phenomenal. So every time we push perfume on us, we are impacting that.
Yes. So, and it was diabetes that grabbed my attention. So when I was in naturopathic medical school way back in the early 70s, diabetes affected less than 1% of the population, and now it's 10 to 20 times more common. What happened? Well, people say, well, everybody's obese now, so of course you get diabetes. And yes, obese people get more diabetes. But obese people in the bottom 10% of chemical exposure do not have increased risk for diabetes. So it's not I want to be clear. I'm not saying being obese is good for you. No. But what I'm saying is a lot of the problems with obesity is not the obesity, it's how you got to the obesity. Yes. If you got to the obesity with chemicals, they're going to get diabetes.
I always say that weight issue in general, that we talk about the emotional component of physical, is only a symptom. Treating just your weight with a diet will not get you to resolve your health issue.
Yes.
Weight is just a byproduct of whatever the root issue is within you. And in the case of this, it's toxicity. So further than diabetes, how is toxin affecting our life?
So I just finished writing an editorial for my journal, IMCJ, which is short for Integrative Medicine, a clinician's journal, and we're a PubMed journal. I just finished an editorial on arsenic, okay? And I was blown away by what I found. So I've been focusing so much on food and health and beauty aids and such, and paying some attention to water, but not as much as I should have. So as I started looking into the issue with arsenic, I discovered things like in North America, over 10% of the water supplies have high enough levels of arsenic to be known to induce disease. And there's some areas in the U.S. which have arsenic levels in the water. This is well water real people are drinking, that is over 10 times higher than the amount necessary to increase risk of disease. So as I looked at the research, cardiovascular disease is a common result of excess arsenic, but the biggest one turns out to be cancer. So research is showing that lung cancer, prostate cancer, pancreatic cancer, all dramatically increase when people have higher levels of arsenic exposure.
Wow. And where does arsenic come from to be in our water? What's the root?
So the worst source of arsenic is from the water. There's some in the food too, but it's not as damaging as one from the water. And the arsenic in the water comes from two sources. Number one, it's natural. And by that, I mean arsenic's in rock.
Yeah.
If you have that be drinking water that comes from that's been in contact with arsenic, it'll absorb the arsenic. So most of the arsenic comes from that. But also, we've released a huge amount of arsenic into the environment because it's been widely used in the past as a pesticide and insecticide. And the way they used it in the past was they basically had arsenic-lead compounds that are put in things like wood to preserve the wood. They were used as sprays, and various arsenic compounds were used as sprays, for example, for wine growing. Anyway, we've released a huge amount of arsenic into the environment. I would say at this point it's probably about half natural and half industrial. But the bottom line is we have lots of arsenic.
So arsenic through natural sources, but through pesticide comes into our water. We drink this water. We unknowingly drink arsenic. One of the things we drink, but I know there's many other toxins in water, but we drink arsenic. And how does it cause cancer? Like without being too technical, but how does that get into the mechanism of the body to cause cancer?
So the underlying mechanism for virtually every kind of cancer is damaged DNA. Because once your DNA becomes damaged, then it starts functioning inappropriately. You start losing, you might say, a growth regulation, and now you got cancer. So basically, almost anything that damages DNA will cause cancer. And it turns out that arsenic damages DNA. And in particular, you know about methylation, homocysteine, and things like that, right? You probably talked to your audience about it. Everybody knows that you have to have good methylation in order to keep your homocysteine levels down, because if you don't keep your homocysteine levels down, you get more heart disease, more Alzheimer's disease. I mean, homocysteine is just terrible for us. So it turns out that the primary way in which we detoxify arsenic is with methylation. So if a person's having trouble with methylation, as measured by high homocysteine levels, they're going to be more toxic to arsenic. Okay, and when you don't get rid of the arsenic, then the arsenic damages the DNA.
Wow. So the body can't rid itself of the arsenic because of a methylation issue. Mm-hmm. So then the body stores the arsenic in our body? Is that how it does?
So it's a little more complex than that. So we're actually, because water has often contained arsenic, as we evolved as a species, we evolved to be pretty good at getting rid of arsenic. Okay. Now, when I said pretty good, it doesn't mean we're perfect at it, but we're pretty good at it. However, when you look at arsenic, it has a certain level of toxicity. So it's directly toxic to our bodies, no question about it. Yeah. That's why people with unhappy spouses, they poison their spouse with arsenic, right? Yes. Anyway, so arsenic's a poison.
Deadly dose of it.
Deadly dose, right? So it turns out that we detoxify arsenic through a double methylation step. So you have to double methylate arsenic before it's then relatively safe and easy for the body to get rid of. But the first step, called MMA, for methylated arsenic, is actually 4 to 10 times more toxic than arsenic. So if a person is having trouble with methylation, arsenic can get stuck in kind of like middle phase, and there it's much, much more toxic.
And that's how the toxicity of the arsenic will then affect the DNA of every one of our cells and can provoke cancer in a person. That's amazing.
Cancer, heart disease, just a wide range of problems.
So methylation, for those of you who maybe it's the first show you're getting into, have never heard of methylation. Methylation is done in our body, and we're using compound found in food, for an example, to layer into this process, and some of the vitamins and the minerals will activate this methylation process. So if you're not nourishing yourself accordingly to what you should be, that could be a cause of poor methylation, correct?
Absolutely. So standard American diet is grossly deficient in B vitamins. And not only that, people have, polymorphisms in their methylation enzymes. So if they have they can have a genetic susceptibility to it, add to nutritional deficiencies. And by the way, there are toxins that will also damage the enzyme systems that produce the methyl groups. You put it all together, and even though in the past as humans we've been pretty good at detoxifying arsenic, the diet we live with now, we've made it harder to get rid of the arsenic.
Amazing. So let's go into the path of detoxification, because this is something that most people have heard on social media or in magazine when there's those detox cure and those cleanse packages and all of that. So can you walk us through what the body does naturally to detox us, and what are those detox, like in variation to what our body does?
Great. So let me kind of walk it through a little differently and talk about how I discuss it in the book.
Amazing.
So what I do in the book is I start by saying, okay, here's how the toxins are poisoning your body, damaging your health. Here's how they cause chronic disease. I tell people where they come from, how to avoid them. But then I don't go into a detox program at this point. What I say instead is you have to prepare your body's detoxification systems before you start stirring things up. Because if you start releasing the toxins from your cells before you're able to get rid of them, they can become even more toxic.
Yes.
So the first detoxification step is you got to get your gut cleaned up. Okay. It turns out that having the wrong bacteria in your gut or eating the wrong foods will produce a lot of toxicity that goes into your body. So you got to stop the gut from producing toxins. And not only that, but a properly functioning gut will get rid of toxins. For example, I mentioned arsenic. If you have the right kind of bacteria in your gut, the bacteria to protect themselves will methylate the arsenic to make it less toxic. Okay, so a healthy gut helps us with detoxification in so many ways. The next step is the liver. So the liver is our primary way in which we neutralize chemicals. Well, if you're overloading the body with toxins, not only do they poison regular enzyme systems in the body, they also poison the detoxification systems in the body. We have too much toxins. So I basically show people a process or walk them through a process of how do you prepare the liver for detoxification, how do you clear out the excess bile, how do you get all the right nutrients in there for the enzymes to work properly, and if you have toxic exposure, what are some herbal medicines you can use to help make your liver function more effectively. And the final step, and this is Brent, I didn't even think about this a few years ago. We've got to get the kidneys working properly. Yes. We have an epidemic now of kidney failure. I mean, when I was in naturopathic medical school half a century ago, kidney failure was incredibly rare. Now we have these dialysis centers all over the country. So what happened? Well, these various toxins and over-the-counter non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, the so-called NSAIDs, they are very, very hard on the kidneys. So I walk people through a process of saying, here's the things that damage the kidney, stop doing it, okay? Yeah. And then there's some things we can do to actually improve the blood supply to the kidneys, so now the kidneys can more efficiently get rid of these various toxins. So now after you've done all of that, okay, now your body's ready, then I show people an intense detox program, which is a combination of, number one is lots of fiber, because you have to have fiber in your gut, so when the liver dumps the toxins into your gut, there's something to bind to them to get them out of the body. Otherwise, they get reabsorbed through something called intrahepatic recirculation. So I tell people fiber. I have them do saunas. I have them do alkalinizing nutrients, because it turns out our bodies are very acid, and that acidity makes it hard to get rid of nutrients. So we alkalinize the body, we help get rid of nutrients get rid of toxins more effectively. And after doing all that, and then I say to people, now, how do you live a toxin-free life? So like we did in our family, my wife and I, we went through our house and we threw away everything plastic in our storage containers. We have now all our storage containers are glass, and all our storage containers even have glass lids. Now, the edges are still plastic, can't get around that, but at least the majority of it is glass. So we're doing everything we can to decrease our exposure to plastics and toxins.
I think that's a beautiful resume. And you hit the point that I wanted to get to, is we need to prepare our body before we jump into whatever detox or cleanse you're trying to get to. You got to prepare your body, because a sick body and a body that's full of toxin will not be able to do what the detoxification is intending to do, and you will get sicker.
Yes, and that's one reason why when people who are overweight try to lose weight, run into a lot of trouble, because many of these toxins are fat soluble. So you start breaking down your fat, and what happens, all these toxins come into your body, including, by the way, PCBs. Mm-hmm. And PCBs, which, by the way, were banned 40 years ago, but because they're a class of toxins called persistent organic pollutants, or POPs for short, they're actually designed to be difficult to break down. So the PCBs have a half-life in the body. That's how long it takes for the body to get rid of half of them. Half-life is measured in over 10 years. Okay. Wow. So once you get in your body, they're really hard to get rid of. So they're stored in the fat. And so when you start losing fat, all these PCBs start circulating, which are hard to get rid of. And the PCBs poison the thyroid. So now you start producing less thyroid hormone, and you also start decreasing the conversion in the cells of thyroid from T4 to the more active T3 level. So what's happening is you're feeling toxic from the toxins, feeling bad from the toxins, and you're feeling tired because now your thyroid activity is going down. And so it makes it really hard to lose weight.
And I want to tie in a little bit of my personal story in this, and Dr. Pizzorno may not be aware, but I have a personal journey of weight loss where when I got into the field of natural medicine, I actually was for myself. It wasn't to help the world. I was in the hospital, panic attack and anxiety and pre-diabetic and cholesterol and a whole bunch of issue. And I found food, but I also found a health practitioner that helped me. So when I lost the weight, one of the number one thing he did is put me on a super awesome multivitamin and a metal factor to help me detox, because he knew that I wasn't healthy to begin with. And if I start losing weight and losing fat, I would get sicker.
Yep, exactly right.
So if you are on this journey, any listener, and you're trying to lose weight and you're not addressing what Dr. Pizzorno is saying, you may get exactly into the situation to describe, and maybe the reason why you're not achieving your goal.
Yep.
Maybe you started very strong and then all of a sudden you're plateauing or you're not getting results at all because of that toxicity factor that's now being released in your body.
Absolutely.
So now that we understand how to do this pathway, and again, I'm showing the book because you should refer to that as far as the protocol to do it, and step by step, he will take you through that.
Yes.
What can we do to prevent this in our day-to-day life?
Right. So as I say many times in my book, I say these toxins are so hard to get rid of. The first thing you got to do is just not let them in. Okay. That means looking at every, you might say, input into your body and make sure it's clean as possible. So it starts with food. Okay. I would say probably about 70% of the toxins come from food and the packaging in which the food is stored. Okay. Critical factor. So organic foods. You have to eat organically grown foods. Now, if you can't afford to eat everything organically grown, the Environmental Working Group on their website will give people advice on which foods are the most toxic and which are the least toxic. So the ones that are most toxic have to be organic or don't eat them. I'll be blunt about it. If they're not organic, don't eat them. Whereas the ones who have low toxin level, if you can't afford it, it's okay to eat them regularly. Okay. So that's very important. So, for example, a study was done here in Seattle where they looked at children who were eating primarily conventionally grown foods, and they looked at kids who were eating primarily organically grown foods, and they compared them for organophosphate levels in their bodies. Now, why are organophosphates important? Well, because they poison neurological systems. Yeah. And the kids with the highest levels of organophosphate pesticides have a lower IQ than the kids with the lowest levels. And they also have more ADHD. So what was the ratio between the kids eating conventionally grown foods versus organically grown foods? Kids eating conventionally grown foods had 9 times higher levels of organophosphate pesticides in their bodies. So right there, big factor in health. But not only that is the how the foods are stored. A study was published recently where they looked at the amount of bisphenol A in canned food, canned soup, versus homemade soup. They looked at lentil soup. And they looked at the amount of how much people's bisphenol A levels went up in their body by consuming just one serving a day of canned soup for 1 week, and increased by a factor of 12. So 12 times higher just from eating canned soup rather than making homemade soup. So it didn't matter whether it's organic or not. If it's organic, you'll get the same problem. If you're doing canned soup, it's lined in plastic, and the plastic releases bisphenol A into the body. It's a
real food.
Real food, properly prepared and properly stored.
Exactly. That's what I always say to people. When you start your nutrition journey, go to real food, and right off the bat, that's going to reduce your sugar. That's going to reduce toxicity.
Yes.
Right? That's going to be all positive. So first step is real food, organic. And I will link in the show notes for people the website that Dr. Pizzorno is talking about, where you can get the Dirty Dozen list of food you should be focusing on if you have financial restriction.
Excellent. And another way to look at it is, are you aware of the World's Healthiest Foods website?
Yes, I am, but I'll link to it.
Okay. So you may not know that my team actually created that website for the Italian Foundation. Okay. And what's wonderful about that website, and so supports the work that you do, is we have tens of thousands of letters from people saying, I stopped eating junk food. I started eating real food, and this, that, and the other disease went away, including my weight going down. I mean, the testimonials we have are just phenomenal. There's no substitute for eating healthy, clean food.
And it's very simple. And for the people that are coming to this new, because we have a portion of our listener that are coming from the world of low carbohydrate and ketogenic world, where commonly on many websites, it is portrayed as eat anything as long as it's low carb. And I have a big problem with that because, as you said, they end up eating junk food. Am I correct?
Right. Yeah, they eat up junk food. And,
right?
And also another factor I think most people don't realize, and I probably should be emphasizing that more when I'm talking about this, is up until your age about 30 or 40, it doesn't matter a lot what you do. Everybody knows, when you're 20 years old, you can go out drinking all night and go to work the next morning. Well, as you get older, it's not so easy anymore. But most importantly, you may not see a lot of effects from toxins until about 40 years of age. But then the research shows after age about 40, if you've not been taking care of yourself, your body goes downhill really quickly. It's really quite scary.
And I explain that to people as your checking account and your saving account. I don't know if you've ever heard this analogy, right?
I don't know.
As you get older, your health saving account is decreasing. And if you're not replenishing it, the saving will go down to zero, and you will live from paycheck to paycheck to paycheck in your checking account. And that's when disease and symptoms arise.
Well, very well stated. Very well stated.
And a great way of replenishing your saving account, is through proper nutrition, real food, and it's through organic food, but also for the ladies, beauty product on your skin.
Yeah, so let's talk about the beauty products. So there's a cool app, and by the way, I have no commercial interest in these folks, called Think Dirty. And so you just take it with your smartphone, you just take a little picture of the barcode on the side of the health and beauty aid, and it'll tell you how toxic it is. It'll tell you what the worst toxins are and how toxic it is. So as conscious as we are of health, once we got that little app, we went through our whole house, looked at all our health and beauty aids, and we threw out over half the health and beauty aids we're using because they had a bunch of toxins in them, and we didn't realize. I mean, we thought we're getting name brand, good quality products, but unfortunately, they're full of phthalates and other toxic elements.
Amazing. And then the next step could also be the household product you use for cleaning.
Yes. Right? So that's another big issue. A lot of these chemicals are not good for us. So my wife makes up our own household cleaning agents. Yeah. I'm sure the commercial people are not going to be happy to hear this, but she basically gets, it makes it 1/3 white vinegar, 2/3 clean water, and she puts in whatever aromatic herb that she feels good about for that day. And most of the time it's lavender. She loves the smell of lavender, so we have lavender in our cleaning solutions. So it's nice and clean. Doesn't damage your body.
Yeah, and it's very easy to do, and it's low cost, people. It doesn't cost anything. Much cheaper than buying commercial product.
Absolutely.
Now, before we wrap up this interview, I want to get into the whole topic of water filter. Mm-hmm. Because tap water is a huge carrier of those toxins in our body that we cook with water or drink the water. So do you have any recommendation on that part?
Yeah, so there's simple and complex solutions. Okay. So the simplest solution are the carbon block filters. Okay. Now, when you use a carbon block filter, obviously you put that in your kitchen sink, so all the food you use there, but you need to put it in your showers as well. Because what happens is the hot water will evaporate a lot of these toxins, and then when you breathe them in, you actually breathe them in more efficiently through your lungs than you absorb them through your gastrointestinal tract. So you need to clean them as much as possible.
So commonly known carbon filter, I just want to interrupt, that's Brita, correct? Brita
that's
filter?
An example.
Yeah, that's a common one. Okay.
So I haven't gone through and looked at each of the brands to see which is best and which is not, but I do know that there are independent groups that have surveyed this. Perfect. Now, in general, your carbon block filters are not going to get rid of things like arsenic. Get rid of arsenic, it's in the form of an organic compound, which it can be, but if it's a typical inorganic compound, it's not going to do very good at getting rid of that. So at that point, you're looking at more sophisticated solutions. And rather than give you a kind of an answer right now, because I don't think I can give a good answer for the average population, what I would say is if you've got high levels of arsenic in your water supply, you need to get it tested. And then if you do, then you need to look for a local supplier to help you with fixing that problem. It's not a real easy one, but it is fixable.
So a very simple carbon filter could be a great step for people wanting to detox their life beyond just food.
Right. Yeah. So that's important. But let me be clear. Water, nearest I can tell, the water for the average person is only going to be 5 to 10% of the toxic load, unless you're in an area with high arsenic, and then it's going to be a huge problem.
Okay. Let me ask a question that I know some of our listeners are thinking in their head right now. You've got a lot of science in your book. It's facts. Yes. It's demonstrated that this is what it is. Why are regular allopathic MDs are not concerned or do not talk about that to their patients?
They've not been taught it. Not only have they not been taught about the importance of nutrition and environmental toxicity, they've been taught to dismiss it and ridicule it. For example, the typical medical school has very little education in nutrition. And the education they have in nutrition is more about meal replacement for people who need IV nutrition, virtually nothing about therapeutic nutrition. And you talk about toxicity, they're taught, well, if you have industrial exposure, it's a problem, but the average population is not a problem. Well, unfortunately, the average population is terribly toxic. Now, for example, looking at just arsenic, I would assert that between 10 and 25% of the population is having arsenic toxicity problems because of water, poultry to which arsenic has been intentionally added, and rice, because rice, for some reason, is very efficient at absorbing arsenic from the water if there's arsenic in the water where it's grown. In addition, if you're cooking rice in water that has arsenic in it, the rice will very efficiently absorb the arsenic from the water that you're cooking it in as well.
So it's not because our doctor, our MD, is never talking to us about that or denying the fact that it's not true. I mean, if you are doubting and you want to have some fact, please refer to the book because it's all sustained with scientific evidence. Yes,
everything I say in there, I show the science behind it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, you have another book coming up, right? That's going to be talking about this as well?
Actually, I do, and this could be a textbook for doctors. So one of my graduates, Dr. Walter Quinion, and I are co-authoring a book entitled Clinical Environmental Medicine. It'll be published by Elsevier. Elsevier is the biggest publisher of medical textbooks, and it'll be coming out in spring 2018. And I have to say, it's been quite diving into the research. It's been quite a revelation. I've known it's been a problem for quite some time, but it's an even worse problem than I thought it was.
That's amazing. But that's great because this is for people that are listening, the book.
That's for consumers, right?
The average person. And then you're putting a book out there that will talk the language of our MDs, of our doctor. Yes. If they are interested, there will be a book out there for them to know about the toxicity of the world we live in and how it affects the disease that we have.
Yes, I would estimate at this point we'll have about 5,000 references in the book. I mean, I want to be clear. We're not making this up. The research is very, very clear. We're exposed to a lot of toxins, and the toxins are damaging our bodies. No question about it. And I'm asserting that the primary cause of the increase in incidence of disease, the chronic disease epidemic we're experiencing, is due primarily to toxins.
That's amazing. So if somebody is out there right now thinking that could be the reason why they're having chronic health issue, that no matter what they're doing with their diet, things are not getting better. Right. What is the next step they can take to research or find out about this?
Yeah, so they need to find a doctor knowledgeable about this because while there are some things you can do yourself, at some point it's good to have professional help. But the professional help has to know what they're doing. Yeah. So naturopathic doctors, functional medicine doctors, many integrative medicine doctors have all been taught about how to think about toxicity, how to measure people's body load of toxins, how to get them out, and monitor and make sure they're getting out the way we expect them to.
And for your knowledge and the listener knowledge, I have done one of those tests because prior to becoming a health practitioner, I was a person who smoked for 15 years.
Okay.
So I did an analysis with a functional medicine doctor, and I was polluted with lead, absolutely polluted with lead.
Yes. Yeah. So we look at cigarette smoking. Cigarettes typically have lead, cadmium, and arsenic. Yeah. Now, usually they're highest in cadmium, but depending upon where the lead is, where the tobacco is grown, will determine what's actually in it.
Yeah, and we worked through a protocol. We did some IV therapy and supplement, and it worked wonderfully. Some great results. So, thank you very much for your time on my show today. It's been an honor to meet you personally, but also I know you've taught a lot to our audience, and I would highly suggest that you go and check out the book. All of the links we talked about will be referred in the show note, and I thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you for the invitation. Great meeting you.
Thank you. There you have it. What a beautiful 35 minutes spent with Dr. Pizzorno. And I am sure that one of the listeners got a huge haha moment listening to this. So if you want to refer to anything that either myself or Dr. Pizzorno mentioned in the show, you can head over to the show note at www.stephaniedodier.com/047, where you will find the link of everything we mentioned. And that's where you can also pick up the transcript and the link to join my community. And I hope to see you there soon. If this is your first time here, then welcome. I'm happy to have found you and that you found me. We do the Beyond the Food show every Sunday and Thursday. Make sure to subscribe to the show so you get every episode. If you've enjoyed the show and believe that someone else would benefit from this experience, please share. It would help me spread the message and help thousands more. If you have a minute and could take a moment to review the show on iTunes with an honest review, I would absolutely appreciate it. Thank you again, and looking forward to serving you in the next episode.